Hey, I'm Alex Radcliffe from Board Game Co., and today I'm reviewing Effortless by Barnmade Games. Effortless is a 1 to 5 player game of set collection and area control. This here is a prototype, all rules and components subject to change, and I'll have a link to the crowdfunding campaign down below. In Effortless, players are expending effort. They're going to be taking their cubes and placing them onto one of these 6 different locations on the board in order to go ahead and take cards which are going to score them points. We'll talk more about how scoring is going to work in a second, but I should start by saying that these 6 locations are going to be coming from, I believe the base game has 10 locations. There are expansions as well, and I don't know if there's any Kickstarter stretch goals, any of that stuff, but there are a lot of locations, and you can also go ahead and mix and match. So for example, over here we can take this peaceful. Instead of having the quiet library, we could have the peaceful library instead, combining a scoring objective with an ability on a card. It's going to give you a lot of different ways that you can have different experiences as you play through the game. Now, the core idea is you are dealing with the degree of area control and set collection. The area control is going to come down to the various spots on the board. Like I said already, on your turn, you take an effort, you put it onto a location, you go ahead and activate the ability on the location, and then you take the card. You now have this card. So you're trying to get cards, but you're also trying to get area control on the locations. Then you're going to go ahead and replace that card over here with a card from the deck, and the next player will take their turn, expending their own effort to be able to put it onto other locations. Now, at the end of the game, we'll come back to the turn cycle in a second, but at the end of the game, you're going to score for 4 different things. The first thing you're going to score for is each location is going to have a scoring objective. The iconography here is pretty simple to read. We have treacherous tunnels. You get -1 point, -1 reputation, in other words, for each cube you have here. Over here in the hidden cave, whoever has the fewest cubes is going to lose 5 points. Over here, if you have 5 cubes or more, you're going to have 10 points. Things like that on these various locations that give you different scoring objectives on the locations just for having cubes in play. Then the cards are going to be the other 3 things you score for. You see, you're going to have actual attributes in the game. The attributes over here are going to be required for items, but on their own, players who have the most attribute cards are going to score for those attributes in the game. So having more attribute cards is going to help you score more points for that attribute. That's the second way you score. The third way you score is going to be set collection from armors. Different types of armor will score you 1, 4, 8, or 13 points for having set collection of the same type of armor. And then lastly, we have the items over here, which require you to have certain cards, and if you do, you'll go ahead and get 4 points. So those are the 4 ways you score. Area control, and then 3 different card types will score you in different ways. Again, remember, those attributes are going to score on their own, but they're also going to help you fulfill scoring requirements for items, which is going to be a big part of how you score points in this game. Back to the turn status over here, or the turn process and whatnot, is on your turn, you take a cube, you put it down on location, you go ahead and take the card. If it's a face down card, no one else will see what it is, you go ahead and replace it. Each location tells you how many cards and face up or face down to place out, and then if there is an ability on the location, you'll do that as well. So for example, when yellow goes over here, they can move one of your effort from here to any other location. So they can go here, take the card, and then go ahead and move their effort somewhere else, being able to get benefit from the ability of that card while also getting cards or placing your effort elsewhere in the game. And you're going to have 6 different abilities, 6 different scoring requirements, and then the whole deck of cards, and that's basically how you play through the game. You're going to expend all your effort until you're done, which is going to be 20 effort by default. I believe at a 5-player game, you're going to remove a little bit of effort. I have to double check if it's 4 or 5, but at higher player counts, you're going to remove a little effort. I think it's 16 effort. But other than that, that's basically going to be how you play Effortless. Now, Effortless has a few things to talk about as well. There are going to be expansions. You know what, let's talk about the expansions briefly now. There's going to be 2 expansions. I have little bags of these over here. Again, prototype. We have the Hunted and the Altered. I have all the components off to the side over here, but I don't know if I'm going to throw them out over here. I'll show you bits and pieces of them. But Hunted, or let's do Altered first. Altered is going to give you classes in the game, as well as new locations. You can have new locations, which means new locations and new scoring abilities, which is going to mix and match. You have this wild effort over here, or wild experience, these cards over here, that will help you out in the game. But then you're also going to have these classes, which will give you abilities and stat boosts. So for example, a gnome is going to start with certain attributes already, and you can combine it with you can have a gnome barbarian, which is going to give you an ability you can have stat boosts from your class, and then abilities from your, class and race or whatnot. So you have abilities and stat boosts and mixing and match those. That's what the Altered expansion is going to add. Now the Hunted expansion is going to add a bit more to the gameplay. The Hunted is going to add creatures you can hunt. And it also has the potential for cooperative mode as well as giving you these creatures. So you have these threats effectively that are going to be messing with various locations, but these threats, they all have 10 health by default, but they're going to have different things you can expend to slowly take them out. Different things that will lower their health until you can eventually kill them, including specific weapons. So for example, this Bloodthirsty bloodthirsty vampire. Coincidentally, this wooden stake over here is item number 10, which means it'll deal 3 damage to the creature as well. So you have specific weaknesses that are even more impactful that will help you take out these threats. And there's also a way to play it cooperatively as well, and it also adds grit as a new type of attribute, as well as more locations and items as well. That's basically what's happening in Effortless, which means now go ahead and dive into the review, starting off with ease of play. This game is very straightforward as far as how to play. The rulebook itself for the main game is like 4 pages, 5 pages. There's really not a lot going on. It's basically on your turn, you place an effort somewhere, you take the ability, take the card, here's 4 ways to score, and that's basically the game. There's not a lot of rules complexity. There's a few things about like, what if 2 people have the most at a location that requires you to have most? You both score. But small things like that, but for the most part, it's a very straightforward game. The expansions for the Hunted, for Altered, the expansion was fairly straightforward. Hunted, there's a little bit more going on because you have to track how the threats operate as well as the changes for cooperative play, but nothing is really significantly difficult to track as far as how to learn, teach, or play this game. And game sessions, it depends on player count, but if you're playing a 3 to 4 player game with the base game alone before you introduce anything complicated, and not that complicated, you can knock out a game in 20-25 minutes. It's a very fast moving game. Place effort, take your 20 turns, gather cards, see who scored the most points, rinse and repeat, or mix different things up in different ways as you go through it. As far as what I like, don't like, and can see others not liking, starting off with what I like, which is an easy game to teach, to play, and get played, and there's a lot of variety mixed into the experience. The entire game comes down to taking a little cube, putting it onto a location, getting the card, and then trying to make sure you have the right combination of actual ability scoring or location scoring, the area control elements, as well as getting the various set collection and having the right cards that will help you out in order to score the 3 different ways the cards are going to score. So the basic game is very straightforward, and then the actual locations and abilities and scoring and play mixes it up, and as well as the expansion gives you even more variability into the mix by just giving you, well, more ways, classes, races, giving you threats, cooperative play. There's a bunch more going on. There's also solo play. I have not played solo play, but overall this game is very, very fast moving, straightforward, easy to teach, easy to play, and gives you a lot of variability in the mix as well. As far as things I don't like in the game, I'll start by saying that I'm not overly pulled in by the art and graphic design in general. Don't get me wrong, there's certain cuteness and a lightness appeal to the lo-fi art and whatnot, but I think in general it's just not pulling me in between the card design, especially a big thing for me. The way you're going to have mixing and matching locations is just having different arts. You have a piece of a library that in no way matches up, which is sure gives you the gameplay variability, but sticks out like a sore thumb as far as placing on the table, which has me really, really not wanting to do it. Overall, no major complaints there. It is what it is. It's, not the worst looking game I've seen, but it's also not one that's pulling me in, and especially as a game that's already going to be on the lighter side for me, I could use those extra things to hook me, and the art, graphic design, etc., presentation in general just didn't hook me. It's a lot of lo-fi art, a bunch of cubes, again, prototypes, so I don't know what will or won't change, but at least in its current state, I'm not being pulled in by it. Speaking of which, I mentioned the lightness. The lightness is going to be a bigger thing for me than the actual presentation in general. I'd say that the game to me is just very, very light. There's nothing wrong with what's happening as far as the game goes. If you want a quick game where you're trying to get multiple ways of scoring, lots of variability, and just very easy to teach you to play, all the things I liked in other words, this game is great as far as that goes. But this game is very much on the lighter side. I can't say I'm overly entranced. Despite the variability, I'd say, for starting with the base game variability comes with different abilities on these and different scoring things. And that doesn't really dramatically shift the way I play the game. Ultimately, you're trying to get a bunch of cards, you're trying to go for the right cards that will help you score your items, you're trying to get that set collection of armor, and everything else feels like minor adjustments to how you're going to approach that. Not any major, past min-mathing a little bit of math, min-maxing a little bit of math, it's not a big shift to the way you're approaching the game. I will say that the Altered expansion gives you some small adjustments to the way you're playing it. I don't think the Altered drastically changed things up. The threats, on the other hand, from the Hunted expansion, that is a bigger shift, but at the end of the day, even with all the things together, and I haven't dove into any, stretch goals or extras from the campaign or any of that, but as far as the base game with the expansions, it's still going to be very much on the lighter side for me. It is a game that's that collection. It's just quick, place a bunch of tokens down, gather various things, see how you scored, rinse, repeat. I can't say I was overly pulled in by it. I'll say that the 2-player game, and I should note I've only played this game at 2 and 3 players. I say that I don't always comment on player counts, but I do think this might be a game that thrives more at 4 or 5. 5 I have a hard time believing so because, again, you have less cubes, which means you're getting less things done, and I always like getting things done, especially in a game that's already this short. But maybe 4 players gives you more dynamicness to trying to vie for things, but it also means that sometimes that card you need to go ahead and score an item comes out, and someone gets to it before you do. So I think at lower player counts, you're actually more likely to get it. But I'd say that the 2-player experience in particular, I do feel was a little bit on the, there's basically a 3rd player coming in. There's a 3rd player who's going to be rolling dice and is going to go into different spots, placing cubes on them, and then taking cards away. And so that didn't feel as as interactive. It felt like just trying to force more card cycling, as well as another player for the area control. It functions, but I think 3 players was fine, 2 players was a little meh, and 4 I can't say I've played at yet, so I can't comment on how the 4 or 5 player experience goes. As far as what I can see others not liking, first of all, there is a memory aspect to the game in general, which is not a huge thing, but there is a memory aspect as far as trying to track what cards other players have gotten to make sure you have more of that attribute. Or, you know, maybe if they're going for purple because they have that item that they want, if you can track what other players have done, if you can memorize what they've done, you might have an edge up over your competition. So it does introduce a memory element to the game. And secondly, in general, just that feeling of, you know, if you're trying to go for set collection, if you're trying to get that set of armor and someone else gets it, especially with face down locations, there's times you will never even see the cards you need. You just won't have the opportunity to get them, and that just takes a little bit of a, you know, if it's a light game of getting the right cards and the cards don't come out, that just might take away further from your experience. As far as final thoughts on Effortless, Prepping for Adventure, it's a fine game. It does what it needs to do. It's if you're looking for a light game that's easy to teach, easy to play, has a degree of variability, has expansion variability, this game checks a lot of the boxes. But it's not a game that wowed me in any way. It's not a game that, you know, felt like a great gateway game, nor a game that pulled me in with a strong degree of amount of strategy or interweaving elements. It checks the boxes, it works, it's a fine game, but for me, it's a 3 out of 5. It does everything okay, but doesn't really pull me in any particular sense. It just does everything okay. As far as other game recommendations, first of all, I'd recommend Ethnos. If you're looking for a game that kind of had a similar vibe for the fast-paced area control, also a game I never got pulled in visually by, but a game that had a bit more to the gameplay experience, I think Ethnos is falling into a very similar vein with a drop more to it. And if you want a game that, again, has that area control puzzle, but with a lot more going on, I think Alien Frontiers, which has been in a variety of prints and come back and, you know, has expansions, has a ton of content for it, I think Alien Frontiers gives you that area control with a lot more going on in the game. In any case, and until next time, I'm Alex Radcliffe from Board Game Co. I hope you enjoyed this video, and as always, I hope you have a good one.